It's a beautiful October morning. Time to make some beer. Right now I'm heating some water, about 12 gallons. I've added a tablespoon of gypsum. Using a converted keg. I have bazooka screens in the bottom. I'm doing a no Sparge, single vessel, all grain batch. And here's my grains. I'm using 20 pounds of German Pilsner malt, 2 pounds of 80-degree crystal, 2 pounds of Munich malt, and a half pound of roast barley, for a total of 24.5 pounds of grain. It's a fairly under-modified German lager malt, so I'm going to have a protein rest about 122 degrees. I'm mashing, and actually my water is about 122 right now. Normally you'd overheat your water, throw in the grain, try to equalize the temperature down to what you want. I have a lot of thermal lag in this system, so once I get the water up to about the temperature I want and throw in the grain, it continues to heat up a little while, and I end up about where I want to. I've added my 24.5 pounds of grain with 12 gallons of water. You can see it fills it right up to the top. Turn the heat off. I'm going to let it sit for a while. I was aiming for about 122. A little closer to 124, 125, 126 maybe. Let it sit there for a while for protein rest. It's not completely modified German malt. It's actually a Pilsner malt. Here's my stirring stick. My goal is to make a dark coppery red ale. So let this sit for a while, and then turn the heat back up. Try to run up to about 152. Well, I've been doing my protein rest for about half an hour. I'll turn the heat up, raise it up to about 152, finish my mashing. I'm trying to end up with about 10 gallons. I have to watch my temperature closely. This system, once you turn the heat off, it continues to rise. It goes up almost another 10 degrees. So let's turn the heat back on. Reached my final mash temperature. I was aiming for 152. It's about 153. I'm going to have to let it sit for a while. It already smells pretty sweet. Check it for starches here a little while, and then I'll crank up the heat and run it off. I need to get about 12 gallons for the boil. Here's what it looks like on top. It smells really sweet, so I think it's converting well. Now what I'll do is heat up about 3 gallons of water on the stove to about 170 degrees. So when I start running this off, I'll pour that 3 gallons on top. So I'll get my good 11 to 12 gallons for my boil. not quite as efficient as having a lauter tun and Sparge water set up. Takes a little more grain to do this. I could probably make the same beer with about 18 to 20 pounds if I had that kind of arrangement. So there's a little trade-off. Costs a little bit more, but I don't have near as much equipment to deal with. The quality of the beer is very good. Well, the starches have finally converted to sugar. It took a while. It got cooled off while I went and ate lunch. Had to put some more heat back into it. But it's passing the iodine test now. So it's time to heat it up and run it off. It's a lot sweeter and clearer than it was. Got my mash up over 160 now. Getting ready to run it off. I've got 3 gallons of 170 degree water that I'm going to dump on top after I start running off what's in the cooker here. It's really a multiple use piece of equipment. Use it for mashing and boiling. I'll remove that thermometer before I do the boil and put a plug in there so I don't roast my thermometer. So I guess it's time to start running off the wort. I'm draining off the wort. That's a pretty nice color. I already have about 8 or 9 gallons maybe. You get about 12 gallons for a good boil. I want to end up with 2 5-gallon batches, so I have 2 5-gallon kegs to fill. I poured my 3 gallons of 170 degree water on top here after I started draining. It's about down to the grain now. Here's what the spent grain looks like. Now that needs to be dumped out, rinsed out, have the thermometer pulled and put a plug in it, and we'll refill it and boil. The vessel has been changed over for boiling. I got the 12 gallons I wanted. So it's time to fire up the burner again, get this thing boiling, and start putting some hops in. Well, we're approaching a boil. I've got my hops rounded up here. This is a 1/2 ounce of Chinook hops I'm going to throw in at the start of the boil. And over here I have 3 ounces of Cascades. I'm going to throw 1 ounce in at the last 15 minutes of the boil. And then I'll throw the other 2 ounces in after the end of the boil. Turn off the heat and let them steep for a few minutes. And then I have a little Irish moss to throw in the last 15 minutes of the boil. All these hops were grown here in the backyard. I picked them myself a couple months ago, stuffed them into jars and kept them in the freezer. They're still pretty fresh. And they usually make pretty good beer. Here's the sample of the runoff. It's about 1.050. After I boil that, I should end up about, well, a little higher. Maybe 1.052 or 4. We'll have to see how it finishes. Looks good so far. Got my 1/2 ounce of Chinook hops ready. We finally achieved boil. Skimmed off a lot of foam. Time to stir them in a little. We've been boiling for 45 minutes now. Got 15 minutes left for a 1 hour boil. It's time to throw in an ounce of these homegrown Cascades. It's 10 minutes left in the boil. It's time to get my wort chiller stuck in there, get it sterilized. That's my next step. The wort chiller is situated, all hooked up. It's been a full hour. It's time to add my last round of hops. I have 2 ounces of Cascades. 1. And there goes number 2. I'm just going to turn my heat off, stir those in, let them steep while that wort chills. Cascade hops are steeping, the burner's off. There's water going through the wort chiller. Hopefully in about half an hour I'll have some cooled down wort that I can run into my fermenters, which I've already sanitized. Then I will pitch in some Irish ale yeast. Ferment it for a week, 10 days, whatever, however long it takes, and then run it off into 2 5-gallon kegs. And about a month here I ought to have some really good beer. Made this recipe many times or something similar to it. These 20 pounds of light malt. I like the Pilsner because it leaves a little residual sweetness. These 2 pounds of 80-degree crystal for most of the red color. 2 pounds of Munich malt, which gives a little flavor, a little color. And I used a ½ pound of roast barley this time to make an extra dark red. I normally might use 4 to 6 ounces. I used a ½ ounce of homegrown Chinook hops for the boil, the whole 1 hour. Threw in an ounce of homegrown Cascade hops for the last 15 minutes. And then 2 ounces of Cascades at the very end. It's steep while it's cooling down. So I'll run this off into my fermenters here about half an hour or so and pitch in some Irish ale yeast, and we'll see how it turns out. Well, the wort's almost chilled. I have a sample here. It's giving me about 1.054, 1.056 probably on the gravity. It's still a little warm yet too. So I'll get this run off in the fermenters, get some yeast put in, and try it out when it's ready. Well, it's been a couple months since brew day. I've been enjoying this good beer. The only problem I had was the volume was a little low. I came up about a ½ gallon short. I think since I mashed so long, the grains retain more water than normal, so I'll have to watch that next time. The start gravity came out at 1.058. The finishing gravity was 1.014 with approximately 5.7% alcohol. Beer had a real slight chill haze when I first chilled it down, but it cleared up within a couple days. Definitely got the coppery dark red color I was looking for. The roast barley really adds a lot of color and flavor to it. It has an almost roasty, sort of coffee-like flavor to it. I'll probably go back to using 4 ounces and 10 gallons on the next batch. But this is good, it's different. It has a little Cascade aroma, some moderate bitterness. decent foam. It's that real slight sweet finish to it from the Pilsner malt. Overall, I'm quite happy with it. Look forward to making more. Sláinte.